Hello everyone, welcome to this Canopy training video. Today we're going to show you how to build a Word report for use within Canopy. Okay, so what we have here is a Word document which we're going to use as our template report. So I've just built more or less what the structure of the report we would like it to be. So we can see we have some information here. We've got our logo for the company. We've got a static title here. This might be where our report title goes. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Okay. And we've got a table down here summarizing some information, table of contents. We've got an executive summary section here with a nice chart. We've got a summary section down here. We're going to summarize the results from the testing in a table. And then we've got our detailed results section here. And we're going to do a detailed results per test phase. So if you've got a multi-phase engagement, for example, if you're splitting your tests up into mobile tests, web application, infrastructure, and so on, we're going to separate those results out so they're nicely grouped together. Okay, so before we do this, we need to import the mapping structure from Canopy. So what that is an XML document that we generate from Canopy, which we can then load into our Word document using the Canopy Template Mapping tool, which you can install. And that will allow us to insert fields from Canopy. So some of those fields are system fields and other fields are custom fields that you might have added to your Canopy configuration. So let's go into Canopy and get that file first. So we go into our template section under reports, and we're going to do the full Pentest here. So let's go ahead and download the mapping XML. Okay, we save that to disk. And then we go back into Microsoft Word and we click on Show XML. So at the moment we don't really have many options available to us. So if we click on Show XML, that's going to detect that we don't have any XML loaded into the system, but we can go ahead and select it here. And once we've loaded the XML, you'll see you get the XML panel here. So that gives you a tree view of all the data that you can insert from Canopy during the report generation process. So we have some system data here, which is not very useful. We have report data. So this is the top level report information. If we go back into Canopy, this is what we're talking about here. So the executive summary fields, the technical summary fields, or whatever fields you've built inside of Canopy for to capture that report information. And then if we look down here, we have everything from the company down, right? So obviously we're building a report for a specific client. So this gives us access to all of the client information. Then we'll have access to the project information relating to that client. And down here we'll have our contacts and our phases. Inside of phases is where we'll find obviously phase summary information, but also our findings. Because our findings are being grouped per phase, we find that information here. So we can go ahead down into findings by finding, and what that means is that we have a list of findings which might be ordered based on the risk rating or CVSS or something like that. But we can also do other types of groupings. We can do finding by asset, for example, which is a pretty common one. If you're building things like PCI reports, you might want to group your findings into their list based on the assets, right? But for this example, we're going to do a findings by finding. So I'm not going to explain all of this XML tree. I mean, you can browse through it and see what fields are open. There's also some support documentation that will help you guide you through that. But we're going to go ahead and build this report. Right, so we're starting off for a cover page here. And again, this is just an example. Your templates can look completely different to this. So we're going to go ahead and add a report title here. Okay, so let's go ahead and insert that. And just a quick explanation, what we're doing here is inserting content controls, right? So Microsoft Word, since I guess 2007, introduced the concept of content controls, and they're Microsoft Word's new way of automating Word documents. Previously you had the mail merge approach using document properties and so on, but gradually Microsoft has been migrating away from that at a very slow pace, but they have been migrating away from it to give us a better solution based on documents, on content controls or structured data types, as you might see them referenced to in the Microsoft documentation. Anyway, so we've inserted a content control, we've styled this, and we're just going to center it so it's in line with the rest of the styles in the documents. What would happen if we just generated this document is the report title will be replaced with whatever the report title of the test that we're working on. Okay, so that's very simple. Here we've got a simple table which we're going to put some other variables into. So we're going to put our client in here. So we go down to company, insert name, reference. So we might use the project's reference here. Okay, the date. So this might be the date that we're issuing the report on. So let's go ahead and put date issued in there. And author. So we might have a single author. We might use the lead author option here. Or if we had multiple authors, we could use the authors list. So we're going to use the authors list. In fact, let's go ahead and put, let's put lead author here. And we'll put another table here, co-authors, for example. Okay, so let's put the lead author here. We can put their name in. Oops. Okay. Lost my cursor position there. All right, and in this section, we're going to put in the names of the other authors. Okay, and because there might be more than one, we're going to repeat around this. Okay, so doing repeats inside of tables is a little bit tricky, but not impossible. So we select our data value here, which is the author name. And because we have a node here, which there could be multiple nodes of author, we can put a repeat around that. So we're going to go ahead and insert a repeat content control. And what that will do is will give us a list of all of the users. Now you could put this as a bullet list if you want, for example. So we can go ahead and put a bullet list there, and that will bullet list the list of authors for us. Okay. All right, so that's the cover page pretty much done. The table of contents, we don't really need to do anything with that. That's just a standard table of contents insertion that will be automatically updated during report generation. But we might want to put in some headers and footers, right? So we see we have some static text in the footer there, which is just some copyright notice. But let's say in the header, we want to put in some information about maybe the client's name. And okay. And then maybe we want to put the confidentiality level or something like that. Okay. So classification, which is where we store confidentiality values. And we could restyle this, like if we want to make that slightly different from a, so we want to make that size 8, for example, and we can center it as well. And maybe give it a different color. Okay, and again, this is just, building a report template. Your report templates can look completely different to this. We're just using this for an example. So now we're getting down to our executive summary section. So if we go to just quickly back to Canopy, we can start to see how this lines up with our document inside of Canopy. Okay, so here in Canopy, we can see this is one of our report templates, and we've got an executive summary, we've got the overview, conclusions, recommendations. So these fields are then available in the XML, which you can then link to the Word template as well. So at generation time, the Word template will get populated. Okay, so the custom content for reports, this is user-defined content, is stored under the content section. Okay. Let's go ahead and open that. We can see we have our executive summary section here, and we have our fields. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and insert overview. It's our first field. And you'll notice that this field is a little bit different from the other fields. This has an XHTML tag associated with it. If we look up here on the cover page, most of them are data values. So Microsoft Word, they have different concepts for the content controls, different types for the content controls. Some of them are run level content controls, which means that they are single line. So they could be multi-line paragraphs, but they don't have a break between the content. And then you have block level. So they can be split up into different blocks, like, paragraphs, stuff like that. There are some special rules that you have to follow with words to help those to pick up style. So a run level content control, such as the title up here, that can be styled in line in your Word document. So we could change the color of this. Okay, let's put that as red and give it bold. And when the document generates, that style will persist. Now, when it's a block level control, that's not the case. You have to specifically configure the style on the block level control. This is a specific requirement in Microsoft Word, right? So if you wanted your base paragraphs to have a specific style, then you can set that style on them. Actually, let's select that. If we go down to the XHTML styles, we can then apply a specific style to it. Now, in this particular case, we're going to leave it as normal text because I've set my normal style up to be the style that I want. But if you had different sections of the document where you might want to have different styles applied to the default content coming in from Canopy, then you can configure that in this way. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, add our conclusions down here. Okay, And again, our recommendations, going to go here as well. All right. And that's it. So the chart is just a normal Microsoft Word chart, right? So there's nothing special about this. We can style this the way we want. We can give it different color schemes. Like I think instead of this red, we might want to put a purple color, for example, to be consistent with the color scheme. Let's go ahead and update this as well. Okay. Oops. I actually think my ordering might be a little bit off here, but anyway, we can fix this later. Let's see, low, and I think that's fine. Okay, so we can just insert any type of chart that we want, and we use plugins to generate data for the charts. So we can see how that works a bit later. But if you wanted to build a chart here, like a pie chart, or a bar chart, or a line chart, or a scatter chart, or a bubble chart, or anything like that, that's all supported. You just need a plugin to generate the data. We have some sample plugins. If the sample plugins are not generating the types of data that you want for your charts, then you can just contact us and we can help you with that. Okay, so that's our executive summary basically done. We're going to go down to our technical summary now. So the technical summary is very similar to our executive summary in that this is, the approach is very similar. We're just inserting data points into the document. So let's go down to our technical summary, sorry. We can insert the overview here, scope, okay, caveats, let's get that text holder out of the way. All right, and then we get down to a section which is a little bit different, okay? So we have a summary section here which we're going to summarize because this is going to be a multi-phase report. We're going to summarize it based on the phase. So above the table, we're going to put the phase title. Okay, so let's get down to our phases section. And we can put in our phase title here. Okay, and again, that phase title has a style associated with it, which is in this case heading 3. And then we're going to put our findings here, our results here. Okay, so we want to put in our finding title. We're going to put in the status of the finding, so if it's open or closed, and then we're going to put in the rating or severity, whatever label you want to use here for that particular finding. Then what we're going to do is make sure that we have a way of looping around this, so we output all of the findings relating to this given phase and group them according to their particular categories. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in our finding data points. So we want the title, okay, and we want the status here. Okay, and I've put in text here for the ratings, and the reason why I've done that, let's just center this, is because we already know how we want to group this information. And the reason why I'm putting in static text here is because we're going to color these table cells. So it's a little bit more distinct and easier for the users to understand what the meaning of it is, right? So in this particular document, we're going to use this color scheme. But again, your color scheme can be match your requirements. Okay. Right, and we're just going to make that white text so it stands out a little bit better. Okay, and we'll make it bold. All right, so that's great. So these particular values are going to be common for each row of the table. And that's it. Now, if we were to just generate this report now, what it would do here is insert the first finding and its first status on every single line here, which obviously doesn't make sense, okay? So what we need to do is, first of all, we need to determine if the finding has the rating type that we want to insert into that table row, because we're going to repeat all of the rows together that have a specific severity. And then we need to put the repeat around that. So the first thing we'll do is add a conditional here. So a conditional, this is using XPath1, and conditionals are like essentially if logic, right? So XPath1 is a somewhat limited set of logic variables that can be, or logic tests that can be applied. But we are working on support for XPath2 at the moment. So that will become improved in the not too distant future. So in this case, we want to go to our rating type and we want to filter here. So we're going to do it essentially an if this rating is critical, then we want to output it here, okay? So we put our conditional around it. That gives us our starting position for the XPath. And we just do a simple string match here because we know that that's the value that's coming from Canopy. the, oops, should be rating type. Okay, the value that's coming from Canopy, we want to ensure that rating type is critical for this conditional here. So that's our conditional in place. You can see it's got a conditional tag around it. And then we're going to put the loop around this, right? So this, like from a programmatic perspective, it's equivalent to, for each finding, do a conditional check to see if the rating value equals the rating value that we want to output here. And that's it. So we put a loop around our finding nodes. So that's a repeat content control. And that's it. And we do the same thing for each one of our sections here. So select that, rating type, insert condition. Oops. Okay, this one's going to be high. Let's go ahead and copy that so we can just reuse this, the next one. And again, we're going to loop around this one. So this is for our high findings. We're going to do our medium findings now. So again, insert content control. This one's going to be medium this time. So these are the default ratings that are coming from Canopy. If you were using something like CVSS here or a custom rating system, it's a similar process. Like if you wanted to have CVSS output the rows based on the CVSS 3 ratings within a specific range, then you can just do, something would be like this, less than or equal to 7.0, and same thing, equals 10 or something like that, right, to give you the range. So that would do the same thing, but for CVSS values. Obviously, we would change the rating type to match the CVSS values, but the concept is very similar. So we'll provide, we've got some examples that we can provide on that to show you how to do it for the CVSS ratings. Okay, so that's our low one done. Of course, we need to put the repeats around those, but let's just finish doing the conditions. And this one's going to be our info. Okay. Now, let's just put the repeats around our findings again. And we're almost done. So that's going to give us our findings grouped in their severities for that specific phase. But if we have multiple phases, we're going to need to loop around the phase itself. So in this instance, we have to select up here from our phase. Okay, we want to select that just after the table, so there's a nice, and we get a nice spacing between the multiple phases. And then we just put a repeat around the phase itself. So we go to the phase node and then insert repeat content control. And that's it. So what this will do now is it will output a summary table for each phase listing all of the findings. Now, if you didn't want to have the info findings here, you don't have to output them, right? This is purely, if you just wanted to summarize based on there being critical or high issues, then you can add a summary on that. So it really depends on how you want to structure the data for your reports. Okay, so now we're going into a detailed results section. And again, similarly, we're going to do this per phase base because we want our findings to be grouped per phase. Okay, we put the phase title in here. We're going to put our finding title in the top section here. Okay. So in Canopy, you have categories and attack classes. Some of our users make use of those. Some of our users don't. They're customizable, so you can add. You can think of them as a type of a nested tagging system. It's common to use for, say, like OWASP top 10, or if you've got specific categories and attack classes that you want to use for tagging information, so you can build queries to analyze that in the future. That's fine. I'm going to use them in this template. You don't have to use them in your reports. Again, Canopy will adapt to your data requirements in the reports. But we have those values here. So we're going to put in our category type, our attack class type as well. So the type is the full name and the abbreviation is the shortened version of it. And we're also going to put in our status here. So again, like open, closed, partially, etc. And we're going to do something similar like we did up in our summary table, but for our detailed findings. So in this case, we don't need to put the repeat because the repeat's going around the whole finding. So we just need to add a conditional here. And to save a bit of time, I've already done the styling. Okay, so again, we're going to go to our rating type, start condition, still have the old ones, critical, and we're going to do our high one now. Okay, and just to show you here, if the plugin will do some basic XPath validation, right? So if you make a mistake, then it's going to give you a specific error string to let you know where the failing might be in your XPath. But sometimes when you're building more complex XPaths and you're not sure what the result's going to be like, because the data here is just for mapping purposes, you might want to test this on a generated set of data. So you can generate a test XML from the system to get some actual report data, which has proper values in it, like multiple findings and so on. And you can load that into any sort of XPath editor and start working on the XPaths and that. Once you've got them perfected in the editor, you can just cut and paste them in here. So that's an easy way of making sure that your complex XPaths are going to work before you get to generating your reports in the future. Okay, so this is our high issue. Oh, actually that was our medium. So if we need to edit this, we can just go back, select the XPath, go into our Canopy Template Mapper and click on Edit. So we can just edit that then. And that's it. Let's do our low rating. Okay. We're going to do our info rating now, and that's it for the conditionals here. Oops, should be info. Okay, so great. The next field that we're going to insert is a summary list of assets. So there's different ways you can do this. We have our assets node down here. I'm just going to go ahead and insert the CSV list because I find that quite useful. In that, rather than having an asset per line. In some cases, you might have too many assets to list here. So even grouping them by as a comma separated value list might lead to there being pages and pages of assets. So what you can do here is like insert a condition. Like maybe you've got a condition that does something like this. See the appendix for detailed assets. And what we could do here is we could have a condition around this, which does a count of our assets. So if we do a condition here, we could use another one of the XPath1 tests, which is just do a simple count. So if we said that the count is greater than 5, for example, okay, then, or sorry, we want this to be output if it's less than or equal to 5, okay. Oops. And then maybe we want to output this text if it's greater than 5, okay. So our condition, so count is greater than 5, so we can do that. And that allows our document to be a little bit more dynamic and to make sure that we don't end up having too much data in sections where it's going to make it difficult for the reader to follow the report. Obviously, this would require you to set up an appendix with the detailed assets. So we're not going to do that in this example, but it's pretty basic. It's the same way as we've set up these sections as well. So we're going to complete this section here. We'll go to our contents section. We've got a bunch of different fields here. The base fields are summary, retest update, description, background, and recommendation. All of these other ones are custom fields, so you could add custom fields yourself to your own Canopy installation. It depends on what fields you need. So we're going to put our background here. And we're going to put our description here. And recommendation. Okay. So if you wanted to do things like add cross-references or add links that are being captured by Canopy, you can add more sections here, right? So like that's supporting the Canopy and relatively straightforward to do. But in this case, we're just going to do a simple example first, and we'll come back with a more detailed example later. Again, because this is a multi-phase report, we're going to repeat around the entire detail block here. Right, so we're going to go ahead and repeat around phases. All right, and that's it. And just to finish up on this example, we'll do our change control. So Canopy in the report section stores version information and outputs it into a report for you. So we can go here, we can get our version history. Let's just make sure that our table is fixed with. So when you're setting up your tables in Canopy, or just in Word in general, if you're going to have varying lengths of data inserted into those cells, but you want the table structure to maintain the same spacing, then it's always a good idea to switch and make sure you've got fixed column width enabled. Okay, here we're going to put our version in. Okay, we're going to put a date. Now we support date content control, so we can put in a date content control here. And that allows us to set a specific locale to the date. So if we, for this, you need to go to the developer tab and click on properties, and that will give you the configuration information for changing the date properties. So we'll just use this type of date for the moment. We can put in what our changes here. So like that's our comment listed here. Okay. And then we can put in the author. And again, because there might be multiple versions, we're going to repeat around this. Okay, so repeat control. And that's it. So that's our first report template setup. So just a couple of additional pieces of information. These XHTML data types, they're copying XHTML from Canopy and they're converting it into Microsoft Word. So whatever formatting you have inside of Canopy, so if we go back to our report here, we can see here, like this is, a bullet list. There's some highlighted text here and so on. That information is going to be coming via one of those XHTML data types, and it will get converted into Microsoft Word's presentation. And that will retain the formatting, so the highlighting, the bullet lists and so on, that will all be available there. Okay, so it's a way of ensuring that the rich text conversion is done correctly. And if we want to have evidence blocks in our report, so if we go we won't really have it here in the template level, but if we look in our report, we might have some data that's output from a tool like Burp, like, let's say, here's the XSS. Okay. And we might want that to be styled in a specific way. If you create an evidence style inside of Word, then this particular style will be applied to evidence blocks that are coming from Canopy. Okay, so there's a corresponding evidence style inside of Canopy. And that concept is extensible. So if you wanted to have specific styles defined inside of your Word document and use those styles inside of Canopy, you can configure them in Canopy, and then during document generation time, they'll be converted to the style that you want inside of the Word documents. So it might not be possible to define them exactly how you want using CSS inside of Canopy, but inside of Word, it will apply the style that you've got the name label linked to. So there's you can get the full rich text benefits of Microsoft Word, even though it might be somewhat limited from a web styling perspective. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. And that's our template. That's pretty much set up. So let's go ahead and save that. Okay, once you've saved the template, you just go back to Microsoft Word, or to go back to Canopy, and you can upload the new template here. Okay, so let's go ahead and browse for it first. Okay. Oh, actually, it's in sample data. And this is the template that we just updated here. Okay, so we can fill in some of these values here. So this might be our new reports templates. So this is the title that the users are going to see when they select it in the user interface. So maybe give it a better name than that. In our case, we were building this as a finding by finding report. So I mentioned before, you can group them in different ways. So the grouping in this instance was findings. Our default ordering was just using Canopy standard critical to info, but you can set default orderings to CVSS2, CVSS3, or custom rating systems. So we'll leave it as default here. Include associated findings allows you to add more depth to the XML. So if we were going to include members of group findings, which is a concept that you may not be familiar with, but it's explained in documentation, where maybe you have like a top level finding which is missing Microsoft patches, and then you've got a bunch of associated findings with that finding, you can include those associated findings in the XML, and they can be output during report generation time as well. We'll cover that in another video, so it's we can go into that in a bit more detail. We can also give a template name for the downloaded file. So for this purpose, for this one, we'll just use the report reference, report title, and for the the company name or the client. So when the report's generated, it would have something like, P1234 Pentest for acmebank.docx or .pdf or .xlsx. Okay, so let's go ahead and upload that. And that's it. Now our report template is ready for generation. So you can go back into one of your test projects and generate it. And that's it. Thank you very much.